Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, so today we are unpacking a massive, fundamental cultural shift in how we actually get around. Look, if you've been feeling like the traditional way of buying and owning a car just doesn't make a whole lot of financial sense anymore, you are definitely not alone. We're going to explore this profound transformation happening right now in the automotive market. But we're not just going to stay in the clouds with theory. By the end of our time together, you're going to walk away with some highly practical, income-specific financial strategies that you can literally apply to your life today. Consider this your modern guide to navigating the mobility revolution.
All right, let's dive right into this. We're going to move quickly through 6 key areas today. First, we'll hit the new status symbol, then the actual math of inefficiency. From there, we'll break down dealership versus bank loans, the big shift from owning to using, how electric vehicles completely shake up the equation, and finally, we'll build your custom mobility strategy.
So, Section 1, the new status symbol. Let's look at the underlying paradigm shift that's kicking this whole revolution into gear.
Now, there is a fascinating contrast happening between generations right now. Think about the 20th century. Back then, the car was basically everything, right? It was your ultimate ticket to freedom, your independence from your parents, and for sure, your primary status symbol. But jump to the 21st century, and that role has been completely usurped by the smartphone. Today, digital connectivity and social media are what facilitate your social life. Virtual connection is just a much higher priority than physical mobility. Because of this, the deep desire to own a vehicle, which, let's be honest, drove the whole auto market for decades, is drastically dropping off for younger generations.
There's a quote from the research that captures this perfectly. It says, for new generations, it's not about owning an object, but moving from point A to point B in the most efficient way possible. It's simple, but it's huge. We're officially transitioning away from the car as a prized possession to seeing it purely as a functional, accessible mobility service.
That brings us to Section 2, the math of inefficiency. Because this pivot isn't just about changing values, it's being forced by the hard realities of modern cities.
22 hours. I want you to really think about that number for a second. Statistically, private vehicles sit entirely idle for 22 hours out of a 24-hour day. That is literally 90% of the time. You're paying all these fixed costs, the annual road tax, crazy insurance premiums, parking fees, for a heavy piece of machinery that just sits there doing absolutely nothing for 22 hours a day. When you frame it like that, it's increasingly seen as a completely unjustified financial drain.
And that crazy idle time is combining with 4 specific barriers that are actively pushing people away from buying cars in the city. We already talked about the decline of the status symbol. But then you also have intermodal ecosystems, meaning public transit, car sharing, and e-bikes are so dense now that owning a car is kind of redundant. Third, environmental sustainability is a huge priority pushing people towards greener options. And finally, the massive barriers to entry. Getting a license is expensive, insurance for new drivers is sky high, and vehicle prices are just off the charts.
So, if the desire to own a car is fading, but we still fundamentally need to get around, how do we pay for it? Let's move to Section 3. Dealership versus bank loans.
Look, if you do decide the traditional ownership route is for you, how you pay is absolutely critical. Taking out a personal bank loan gives you maximum negotiating power. You walk into that showroom basically as a cash buyer, which lets you negotiate discounts on the list price that almost always beat whatever interest savings the dealer is offering. The catch? You got to manage all the paperwork yourself. On the flip side, dealer financing is super fast and usually comes with bundled perks like extended warranties. But, and this is a big but, those low advertised interest rates usually mask a ton of hidden processing fees. Plus, if you ever want to break the contract early, it's a bureaucratic nightmare because the loan is directly tied to the car itself.
Okay, but what if you want to dodge traditional loans entirely? Section 4 breaks down the shift from owning to using.
Enter NLT, or long-term rental. This is a massive acronym in the market right now. Basically, NLT is an all-inclusive monthly fee for pure usage. You never actually own the vehicle. Instead, every single risk, the depreciation, the maintenance, swapping the tires, the insurance, is completely shifted over to the provider. Think of this as the serenity strategy. You're building zero equity, sure, but you also have absolutely zero administrative headaches. It's just a pure service cost.
And this brilliantly illustrates the big choice in today's market, VFG versus NLT. VFG, or Guaranteed Future Value, is what we'd call the equilibrium strategy. You're essentially taking out a loan just to pay for the car's estimated depreciation over 3 years. You still own it, you pay for the upkeep, and after 3 years, you can return it, keep it, or upgrade.
It's awesome if you want to stay updated with the latest tech, but still want some asset control. NLT, like we just said, is pure usage. No asset control, no maintenance risk. Your choice here really comes down to whether you want flexibility and control or just total, hands-off operational serenity.
All right, Section 5, the EV factor. Because everything we just talked about gets supercharged when you introduce electric vehicles into the mix.
When you compare an EV to a traditional gas engine, the day-to-day costs are totally different. Why? Because EVs have about 30% fewer moving parts. There are no timing belts to snap, no oil filters to change, no spark plugs. And because of regenerative braking, your brake pads last a ridiculously long time. However, the data does show that you really only start seeing these massive long-term maintenance savings once you cross the 60,000-kilometer mark.
But there are some hidden financial realities with EVs you really need to know about. First off, battery tech is evolving so incredibly fast that obsolescence is a huge risk. A 3-year-old EV can be surprisingly tough to resell. That actually makes the NLT, the long-term rental model, perfect for EVs because you just hand back the aging battery and get a new one. Also, while basic liability insurance is usually about 20% cheaper for an EV, comprehensive coverage, often called casco insurance, is basically a high-cost necessity. Repairing EV sensors and battery packs costs an absolute fortune. Oh, and keep in mind those nice regional road tax exemptions for EVs. They usually expire after 5 years.
So what does this all mean for you? Section 6, your custom mobility strategy. Let's make this highly practical and look at some exact strategies based on different income levels.
The sources give us 3 very clear paths here. First, if your income is around 30,000 euros, you want the strategy of substance. Basically, debt is your enemy here. Keep any car payment under 20% of your net monthly income. Grab a clean personal bank loan and buy a solid used vehicle or a budget city car. Now, there is one major exception here. If your household income bracket actually qualifies you for those massive state incentives, we're talking sometimes over 10,000 euros off, then buying a new car suddenly becomes the absolute best financial move. Now, if you're in the 40,000 euro tier, you shift to the strategy of equilibrium. This is where you use that VFG model to access better tech and upgrade every 3 years, keeping your depreciation risk actively managed. And finally, at 50,000 euros and above, you're looking at the strategy of efficiency. Your main priority is optimizing your time. Long-term rental, NLT, is the ultimate play here for turnkey luxury. You're happily paying a premium for the operational serenity of having 0 administrative headaches.
But you know what? Regardless of your income, I want to share my absolute favorite financial life hack from these sources. A lot of people fall into the trap of option A. They buy the total car. Basically, they drop 50,000 euros on a massive SUV just because they need it for a 10-day road trip once a year. That works out to roughly 9,000 euros annually. But check out the alternative, the dual strategy. You finance a snappy 25,000 euro electric city car for your daily commute. That costs you about 4,200 euros a year. Then, you just set aside 600 bucks a year specifically to rent a massive high-end SUV for those couple weeks of vacation. The result? You spend 4,800 euros a year in total. That means you are saving 4,200 euros every single year, you have a perfectly agile car for the city, and you get a brand new luxury rental for your big trips. It is just brilliant financial math.
Well, that brings us to the end of our explainer, and I really want to thank you for your time and attention today. We've covered a huge shift here, moving away from treating cars as these status-driven possessions and towards seeing them as highly efficient, functional utilities. By dodging the trap of the total car and embracing these flexible usage-based models, you can seriously minimize your fixed costs and actually increase your freedom. So I'll leave you with this one final, provocative question to think about. As the mobility revolution accelerates all around us, are you still paying for property, or are you ready to invest in utility?